It was a clear night in the Kandahar province of Afghanistan during early October of the year 2001. High above the rugged terrain, a silent observer circled within the cold currents of the atmosphere. This was not a piloted aircraft with a human sitting in a cockpit, but a machine controlled from thousands of miles away. The Predator drone drifted through the dark sky, while its camera lens focused on a convoy of vehicles moving below. Inside a ground control station in the United States, intelligence officers watched the grainy black and white footage with intense focus. They were witnessing the beginning of a new era in military history, where the line between soldier and machine would vanish forever. The stakes could not have been higher for the commanders watching the screens on the other side of the world. For decades, the United States military had relied on manned aircraft to deliver strikes, which put pilots at grave risk of being shot down or captured behind enemy lines. The capture of Francis Gary Powers in the Soviet Union had left a lasting scar on the psyche of American intelligence agencies. Now they faced an elusive enemy in the mountainous regions of Central Asia who knew how to hide from satellites and fast-moving jets. The ability to loiter over a target for hours without risking a single American life was the holy grail of modern warfare. Enter the central figure of this technological revolution, who was not a general or a politician, but an engineer named Abraham Karem. Often called the drone father, he had spent years obsessing over the physics of efficient flight and long-endurance aerodynamics. While major defense contractors focused on fast and expensive, jet-powered drones, Karem worked in his garage in Los Angeles on a different vision. He believed that a slow and lightweight aircraft with long glider-like wings could stay aloft for days. His persistence would eventually birth the technology that transformed the Predator from a concept into the most feared asset in the arsenal of the United States Air Force. The question that haunted military strategists was whether a machine could truly replace the instinct and judgment of a human pilot in the heat of combat. Could a remote operator sitting in a trailer in Nevada effectively interpret the chaotic reality of a battlefield in the Middle East? Critics argued that looking through a camera lens was like looking through a soda straw, and that the lack of situational awareness would lead to disastrous errors. There was also the moral dilemma of killing from a distance, which some feared would make war too easy to wage. The debate raged within the Pentagon, even as the first armed drones were being prepared for deployment. The reveal came swiftly as the Predator proved its worth not just as a spy in the sky, but as a hunter capable of striking with deadly precision. When the first Hellfire missile was fired from a drone in combat, it shattered the old paradigms of air power and engagement rules. The immediate aftermath was a scramble by every major military power to acquire or develop similar capabilities. The success of the Predator program signaled the end of the monopoly on air superiority held by manned fighters. It became clear that the future of combat would be fought by operators staring at screens rather than pilots staring through heads-up displays. Before the Predator took to the skies, the concept of unmanned flight had a long and often clumsy history dating back to the First World War. The earliest attempts were known as aerial torpedoes and were essentially flying bombs designed to crash into enemy trenches. The Kettering bug, developed by Charles Kettering, was a biplane made of wood and papier-mâché that used a mechanical timer to drop its wings and fall onto a target. Although it never saw combat, it established the fundamental idea of an aircraft that could operate without a human on board. These early experiments were plagued by unreliability, and the technology of the time simply could not support the vision. During the Second World War, the use of radio-controlled technology advanced significantly, allowing for more sophisticated target drones. The United States Navy and Army Air Forces used these small aircraft to train anti-aircraft gunners who needed realistic moving targets to practice their aim. These drones were often brightly colored and simple in design, but they proved that remote control was viable for aviation. A young Marilyn Monroe was even discovered working in a factory that assembled these early drones, which were known as the radioplane OQ-2. Despite their utility, they were seen merely as disposable tools for training, rather than weapons of war. The Cold War era brought a new urgency to the development of unmanned surveillance aircraft, as the need to spy on the Soviet Union grew intense. The Ryan Firebee was a jet-powered drone developed in the 1950s that could fly high and fast to gather intelligence. It was used extensively during the Vietnam War to take photographs over North Vietnam, where the air defenses were too dangerous for manned reconnaissance planes. These drones would fly a pre-programmed route and then deploy a parachute to be recovered by helicopters in midair. While effective, they lacked the ability to transmit video in real time, which limited their usefulness in a rapidly changing battle. It was in the Middle East during the 1970s that the tactical value of drones began to shift toward active combat support roles. During the Yom Kippur War and the subsequent conflicts in Lebanon, the Israeli Defense Forces used unmanned aircraft to deceive enemy radar systems. By sending in drones that mimicked the flight profiles of fighter jets, they tricked Syrian missile batteries into activating their radars and wasting expensive ammunition. This allowed Israeli manned aircraft to identify and destroy the air defense sites with minimal losses. This innovative use of decoys caught the attention of military observers around the world, including those in the United States. Abraham Karem, who had immigrated to the United States from Israel, brought with him a deep understanding of these tactical needs and a dissatisfaction with existing designs. In the early 1980s, he founded Leading Systems Inc. and began building a prototype called the Albatross in his garage. The Albatross was unlike anything the military had seen because it prioritized endurance and reliability over speed. Karem used lightweight composite materials and a highly efficient engine to keep the drone in the air for dozens of hours. His design philosophy was radical because it treated the drone as a glider with an engine rather than a miniature fighter jet. The success of the Albatross led to a contract from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency to develop a larger version known as Amber. This drone demonstrated incredible performance capabilities, including the ability to fly continuously for 38 hours. However, the military bureaucracy was slow to embrace the technology, and funding was often cut or diverted to other programs. The bias toward manned aircraft was deeply entrenched in the culture of the United States Air Force, and many generals viewed drones as nothing more than expensive toys. Karem struggled to keep his company afloat as he tried to convince the Pentagon of the strategic value of long-endurance unmanned flight. Despite the financial struggles and bureaucratic resistance, the potential of the technology caught the eye of the Central Intelligence Agency. The agency needed a way to monitor conflicts in the Balkans, specifically in Bosnia, where ethnic violence was escalating in the early 1990s. They required an aircraft that could loiter over the mountainous terrain and send back video of troop movements and atrocities. The Nat 750, a derivative of the Amber design, was selected for this mission. It was deployed to Albania and operated by a small team of contractors and intelligence officers who worked in secrecy to provide eyes on the ground. The operations in the Balkans revealed a critical limitation of the Nat 750, which was its reliance on line-of-sight radio control. The drone had to remain within range of the ground antenna to receive commands and transmit video. This meant that it could not fly deep into enemy territory without losing the signal. The mountains of Bosnia frequently blocked the radio waves, causing the operators to lose contact with the aircraft. This frustration led to a demand for a system that could be controlled via satellite, allowing for global range and uninterrupted data transmission, regardless of the terrain. General Atomics, which had acquired the assets of the company founded by Abraham Karem, began working on a solution that would integrate a satellite link into the airframe. They modified the Nat 750 by adding a bulbous nose to house the satellite dish and increasing the wingspan to support the extra weight. This new aircraft was designated the RQ-1 Predator, and it represented a quantum leap in capability. With a satellite link, a pilot in the United States could fly the drone over a target in Europe or Asia without ever leaving the ground. The concept of remote split operations was born, fundamentally changing how the military projected power. The Predator made its debut in the mid-1990s and quickly became an indispensable asset for intelligence gathering. It was used extensively in the Balkans to monitor the Dayton Peace Accords and track the movement of Serbian forces. The video feed from the Predator was beamed directly to commanders in the field, giving them a bird's-eye view of the situation. For the first time, generals could watch a battle unfold in real time and make decisions based on live information. The demand for Predator video feeds grew so rapidly that the manufacturers struggled to build the aircraft fast enough to keep up. As the new millennium approached, the threat of international terrorism began to take center stage in American foreign policy. The Central Intelligence Agency began using the Predator to search for Osama bin Laden in the rugged mountains of Afghanistan. On several occasions, the drone spotted a tall man in white robes surrounded by security guards at the Tarnak farm complex. However, because the Predator was unarmed, the operators could only watch in frustration as the terrorist leader slipped away. The time lag between spotting a target and calling in a cruise missile strike was simply too long to be effective. The frustration of seeing high-value targets but being unable to engage them led to a controversial proposal to arm the Predator. The United States Air Force began a rapid development program known as Big Safari to integrate the Hellfire anti-tank missile onto the drone. The Hellfire was chosen because it was lightweight and laser-guided, making it ideal for the fragile wings of the Predator. Engineers worked around the clock to modify the wings and targeting software, conducting test firings in the Nevada desert. The first successful test proved that a drone could not only find a target, but also destroy it with pinpoint accuracy. The attacks on September 11, 2001 accelerated the deployment of the armed Predator to the front lines. The rules of engagement were rewritten overnight, and the drone was transformed from a surveillance asset into a hunter-killer. Within weeks of the attacks, armed Predators were flying over Afghanistan, searching for al-Qaeda and Taliban leadership. The ability to strike fleeting targets without putting pilots in harm's way was a game-changer for the campaign. The first combat strike occurred in October, marking the start of a new kind of warfare, where death could come silently from the blue sky. The use of armed drones expanded rapidly as the war on terror spread from Afghanistan to Iraq and other regions. The Predator allowed the United States to maintain a persistent presence over hostile territory, often referred to as the unblinking eye. Operators would work in shifts, monitoring a single house or road for days on end, waiting for a target to emerge. This persistence allowed intelligence analysts to build a pattern of life for their targets, understanding their routines and social networks. The drone became the primary tool for a campaign of targeted killings that sought to dismantle terrorist networks from the top down. With the success of the Predator, the military began to demand larger and more capable drones that could carry heavier payloads. The MQ-9 Reaper was developed as a true hunter-killer, designed from the ground up to carry bombs and missiles. It was significantly larger than the Predator, with a more powerful turboprop engine and a greater wingspan. The Reaper could fly higher and faster, carrying 4 Hellfire missiles and 2 laser-guided bombs. It was described by the Air Force as a hunter-killer platform with surveillance capabilities, reversing the role of its predecessor. The shift to remote warfare brought with it a unique set of psychological challenges for the drone operators. Unlike pilots of manned aircraft who deployed to the war zone, drone crews drove to work at bases in Nevada or New Mexico. They would spend their shift fighting a war, killing insurgents, and watching battles unfold in high definition. Then they would drive home to their families and eat dinner as if they had worked a normal office job. This rapid transition between combat and domestic life created a cognitive dissonance that led to high rates of stress and burnout among the crews. The psychological toll was compounded by the intimate nature of drone surveillance, which often required operators to watch targets for weeks. They would see their targets playing with their children, interacting with neighbors, and living their daily lives before the order came to strike. This voyeuristic aspect of the job created a strange form of intimacy with the enemy that was unlike anything experienced by a fighter pilot dropping bombs from 20,000 feet. The operators were often the first to see the aftermath of their strikes, witnessing the carnage in graphic detail on their screens. As the United States ramped up its drone program, other nations began to take notice and develop their own unmanned systems. Israel continued to be a leader in the field, exporting advanced drones to countries around the world. China began to invest heavily in drone technology, producing affordable armed drones that were sold to nations in the Middle East and Africa. The monopoly on armed drone technology that the United States had enjoyed in the early 2000s was quickly eroding. The proliferation of these weapons meant that future conflicts would likely see drones used by both sides. The Global Hawk was another major development in the field of unmanned aviation, designed to replace the legendary U-2 spy plane. Unlike the Predator or Reaper, the Global Hawk was a high-altitude, jet-powered drone capable of flying across continents. It carried sophisticated radar and imagery sensors that could scan vast areas of territory in a single mission. The Global Hawk demonstrated the ability of drones to perform strategic reconnaissance missions that were previously the domain of manned aircraft. Its autonomous flight systems allowed it to fly complex missions with minimal human intervention. The ethical implications of drone warfare became a subject of intense debate among legal scholars and human rights organizations. Critics argued that the low risk to the attacker lowered the threshold for using lethal force, making war more likely. They pointed to the number of civilian casualties caused by drone strikes, particularly in areas outside of active war zones like Pakistan and Yemen. The term signature strike, where targets were chosen based on suspicious behavior rather than positive identification, became a flashpoint for controversy. Proponents argued that drones were more precise than traditional airstrikes and actually reduced civilian harm. The technology continued to evolve, with smaller and more tactical drones being developed for use by ground troops. The Raven and the Puma were small hand-launched drones that could be carried in a backpack by infantry soldiers. These systems gave platoons the ability to see over the next hill or around a corner without exposing themselves to enemy fire. The democratization of air power down to the squad level changed the way small unit tactics were conducted. Soldiers no longer had to rely on higher headquarters for aerial reconnaissance. They could launch their own air force in minutes. In recent years, the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh demonstrated the decisive power of drones in a conventional war between nations. Azerbaijan used Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 drones to devastate Armenian tanks and artillery systems. The videos of these strikes were shared widely on social media, serving as both propaganda and proof of the shifting balance of power. The relatively inexpensive drones proved capable of destroying heavy armor that cost millions of dollars. Military analysts watched closely, realizing that the era of the tank as the dominant land weapon was being challenged. The war in Ukraine further underscored the vital role of unmanned systems in modern high-intensity conflict. Both Russian and Ukrainian forces utilized a vast array of drones, ranging from military-grade systems to modified commercial quadcopters. Drones were used for artillery spotting, dropping grenades, and conducting suicide attacks against vehicles. The conflict showed that even cheap off-the-shelf technology could be weaponized effectively. The skies over the battlefield became filled with electronic noise as both sides used jammers to disrupt the control links of enemy drones. The rise of loitering munitions, often called suicide drones, represented a blurring of the line between a missile and an aircraft. These systems could be launched into an area and orbit for hours, searching for a target before diving into it and detonating. The Switchblade and the Shad 136 are prime examples of this technology, which offers a cheap alternative to cruise missiles. They allow forces to attack high-value targets deep behind enemy lines without the need for expensive launch platforms. The psychological impact of a buzzing drone that could dive at any moment is profound. Naval warfare also began to see the introduction of unmanned systems with the development of drone boats and underwater vehicles. These maritime drones could be used for mine hunting, submarine tracking, and even suicide attacks against enemy ships. The concept of a ghost fleet of unmanned vessels operating alongside manned warships is now a central part of naval strategy. The ability to project power at sea without risking sailors is a priority for major naval powers. Experiments with autonomous carrier landings and aerial refueling have proven that naval aviation is also moving toward an unmanned future. The future of drone warfare is increasingly moving toward autonomy and the use of artificial intelligence to control swarms. Researchers are developing algorithms that allow dozens or even hundreds of drones to coordinate their actions like a flock of birds. A swarm could overwhelm enemy air defenses by presenting too many targets to engage simultaneously. The concept of a loyal wingman involves an unmanned drone flying alongside a manned fighter jet taking commands from the pilot. This human-machine teaming is seen as the next logical step in air combat evolution. Counter-drone technology has become a booming industry as militaries seek ways to defend against the growing threat. Systems ranging from electronic jammers and laser weapons to nets and hunter drones are being deployed to protect bases and infrastructure. The cat-and-mouse game between drone developers and counter-drone engineers is driving rapid innovation. As drones become more autonomous and resistant to jamming, the methods of defeating them must also evolve. Kinetic interception using missiles is often too expensive, so directed energy weapons are seen as a cost-effective solution. The legal framework for drone warfare remains a complex and evolving area of international law. Questions about accountability in the event of an autonomous strike gone wrong have yet to be fully answered. The prospect of machines making life and death decisions without human oversight is a scenario that worries ethicists and military leaders alike. International discussions are ongoing regarding the regulation of lethal autonomous weapons systems. However, the competitive nature of the arms race makes it difficult to establish binding treaties or limitations on development. The cultural impact of the drone has been significant, permeating movies, video games, and literature as a symbol of modern surveillance. The buzzing sound of a drone has become a universal signifier of unease and observation in conflict zones. For people living under the flight path of armed drones, the sky has become a source of constant anxiety. This psychological terror is a strategic effect of the weapon that goes beyond its kinetic destruction. The invisible presence of the drone changes the behavior of entire populations, forcing them to alter their daily routines. Abraham Karem, the man who started the revolution in his garage, watched his creation transform the world in ways he likely never imagined. The technology that was once dismissed by generals is now the backbone of modern air power. The transition from the wood and canvas of the Kettering bug to the carbon fiber and silicon of the Reaper is a testament to human ingenuity. Yet it also serves as a stark reminder of how technology often outpaces our ethical and moral frameworks. The genie is out of the bottle, and the sky will never be empty again. As we look to the horizon, it is clear that the role of drones in warfare will only continue to expand and deepen. The distinction between the front line and the home front has been permanently erased by the reach of remote control. We stand at a precipice where the decision to take a life is mediated by layers of code and pixels. The history of the drone is not just a story of engineering, but a reflection of our desire to wage war without consequence. In the silence of the aftermath, only the machine remains circling high above, watching and waiting.